Picture this. It is a Saturday afternoon at a drag strip somewhere in America. Big block V8s are lined up, engines rumbling, tires smoking. Serious money was changing hands in the staging lanes. And then, at the end of the line, a plain little Plymouth Valiant quietly rolls into the staging lane. Six-cylinder engine, stock looking, nothing special. The V8 drivers look over and smile. Easy money. The light counts down. Yellow, 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 green. And that plain little Valiant, with its six-cylinder engine and its $5 secret, leaves them all behind, not by a little, by a lot. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon, because the story of how that happened is one of the most shocking things we have ever covered on this channel. Hit subscribe right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. To understand why this story is so remarkable, you first need to understand what the Chrysler Slant-Six actually was. In 1959, Chrysler introduced one of the most clever engine designs in American automotive history. They called it the Slant-Six, and the name told you exactly what it looked like. The engine sat tilted, leaning at a 30-degree angle inside the engine bay. This was not an accident. This was brilliant engineering. By tilting the engine, Chrysler's designers could lower the hood line. They could fit a longer intake manifold. They could make room for better airflow through the engine bay. The result was an engine that was incredibly compact. The Slant-Six was surprisingly efficient, and it was almost impossibly durable. The Slant-Six came in three distinct engine sizes. First 170 cubic inches, then 198 cubic inches, and the most famous version, 225 cubic inches. The 225 Slant-Six became legendary. The Slant-Six was not built for speed. It wasn't designed for brute power or heavy hauling. It was never meant for drag strip dominance. It was built for one thing only. It was legendary for one reason. It simply ran forever. Taxi companies absolutely loved it. Fleet operators across the country absolutely loved the engine. It was perfect for anyone who needed a vehicle that would go 200,000 miles. Without complaining, loved the Slant-Six. Mechanics everywhere called it bulletproof. Owners called it the most reliable engine Chrysler ever built. But what about the performance, guys? They called it something else entirely. They simply called it the grandma engine, or they called it the truck engine, or maybe just the economy engine. It was the engine you got when you didn't care about going fast. And for years, that reputation stuck. In the 1960s and 1970s, American drag racing was everything. Every weekend, strips across the country filled up with muscle cars, and there was always serious money on the line. You had Chevelle SSS with their massive 454 engines, and you had Dodge Challengers with their powerful 440S, and Ford Mustangs with 429 Cobras. These muscle cars were the absolute kings of the track. These were the cars that everyone came to see. A six-cylinder engine showing up at a drag strip? Well, that was unheard of. To them, that was a complete joke. Guys would pull up in their V8s and laugh. You brought a six to a drag race? The Slant-Six was not a drag car. It was not supposed to be a drag car. Hit subscribe right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. And leave a comment below. What Chrysler model do you think changed history the most? Hit subscribe right now and tap that bell icon and stay connected because full video will be uploaded within few hours. Nobody in their right mind would try to make it one. Except one mechanic. He was not a famous engineer. He did not work for Chrysler. He did not have a research budget. He did not have a team of technicians. He worked in a small shop. The kind of shop where the floor is stained with oil. Where the tools have been used for 20 years. Where the mechanic knows every engine by the sound it makes when it starts in the morning. He had a customer bring in a Plymouth Valiant with a 225 Slant-Six. Simple car. Plain car. The kind of car that was never meant to be anything special. But this mechanic had been thinking about something. He had been reading about airflow and carburation. He had been studying how a carburetor delivers fuel to an engine. And he had a theory. A theory that everyone around him told him was stupid. Here's what he understood about carburetors. A carburetor mixes air and fuel before it enters the engine. The speed at which that mixture travels into the engine matters enormously. Faster moving air carries fuel more efficiently. It atomizes the fuel better. It distributes it more evenly across all the cylinders. The result? More complete combustion. More power from the same amount of fuel. Better throttle response. More torque at low RPM. Now here is the key question he was asking himself. What if you could increase the velocity of that air and fuel mixture without changing the carburetor at all? What if there was a way to make the existing carburetor perform dramatically better? With a simple, cheap modification that anyone could do in an afternoon. He had an answer, a carburetor spacer. A simple piece of machined metal, 1 inch thick, that bolts between the base of the carburetor and the top of the intake manifold. The concept was actually quite straightforward. Hit subscribe right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. Leave a comment below. Do you think this simple spacer is the best budget mod for a Slant-Six? By raising the carburetor slightly, just a little bit of extra space, and forcing the incoming mixture down through the spacer's holes, you increase the velocity of the air and fuel charge entering the engine. Higher velocity meant better fuel atomization, better distribution, more complete burn, more power than he ever expected from the Slant-Six. His fellow mechanics heard the idea and shook their heads. "That's stupid," one said. He just couldn't believe it. "A 1-inch spacer isn't going to turn a Slant-Six into a race engine," said another. He smiled and went back to work. The installation itself was simple. He sourced the spacer, a basic aftermarket unit, nothing exotic, nothing expensive. He removed the carburetor from the Valiant's intake manifold. He placed the spacer on the manifold, bolted the carburetor back on top, checked the fuel line clearance, adjusted the throttle linkage slightly to account for the extra height. The whole job took less than 2 hours. He started the engine. It idled the same, smooth, steady, quiet. The Slant-Six sounded like it always sounded. He took it out for a test drive, and something was different. Something in the way it pulled. The throttle response was sharper, crisper, more immediate. When he pressed the accelerator, the car moved with a kind of urgency it had never had before. Not dramatically, not obviously, but unmistakably. The engine felt more alive. He drove back to the shop. He called his fellow mechanics over. "Drive it," he said. One by one they did, and one by one the same look crossed their faces. Something had changed. Everyone could feel it, something big. Hit subscribe right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. He wanted real numbers, so he took the Valiant to the local drag strip. He lined up in the economy class, the class where 6 cylinders and budget cars competed. But then something happened that nobody expected. The times were not just better, they were significantly better. The Slant-Six with the carb spacer was pulling a quarter-mile times that put it in genuine competition with some of the weaker V8 cars. Not the 454 Chevelle, not the 440 Hemis, but the mid-range V8s? The Valiant was keeping up. Word spread around the strip. People started walking over to look at the engine bay. They expected to find something dramatic. A new carburetor, a performance intake manifold, an aggressive camshaft. What they found was the stock Slant-Six engine, with one modification, a simple spacer between the carburetor and the intake manifold. The looks on their faces were worth everything. Now let us be completely clear about what was actually happening. The carb spacer was not magic, it was physics. When you force air and fuel through a smaller, more focused opening, velocity increases. This is called the Venturi effect. It is the same principle that makes an airplane wing generate lift. The same principle that makes a carburetor work in the first place. By adding the spacer, the mechanic was essentially extending the carburetor's Venturi effect down into the intake manifold. The mixture arrived at each cylinder traveling faster. More uniform, more finely atomized. This meant the fuel burned more completely inside each cylinder. More complete combustion means more energy released from the same amount of fuel. More energy means more power. The Slant-Six was not a different engine after the spacer. It was the same engine, finally breathing the way it was always capable of breathing. If someone had just thought to ask the right question, and this mechanic asked it. Once word got out, like the Slant-Six community went absolutely wild. Mechanics across the country started experimenting. Some used 1-inch spacers, some tried 2-inch spacers. Some experimented with open spacers versus 4-hole designs. Each variation produced different results at different RPM ranges. The open spacer, at a simple hollow ring with no holes, increased top-end power. The 4-hole spacer, with 4 openings forcing the mixture into focus streams, improved low-end torque and throttle response. Combined with other basic modifications like a performance carburetor, better ignition timing, a free-flowing exhaust, the Slant-Six transformed from the grandma engine into something genuinely surprising. Chrysler's own engineers had actually explored this territory years earlier. In 1960, engineer Tom Hoover helped develop what Chrysler called the Hyper Pack, a performance package for the Slant-Six that included a longer intake manifold and a single 4-barrel carburetor. With those modifications, the Slant-Six produced 200 horsepower. A Plymouth Valiant with a Hyper Pack powered the first 7 finishers in the compact class at Daytona in 1960. The result was so dominant that NASCAR's inaugural compact race was also its last. They banned the Hyper Pack Slant-Six from competing because it was simply too fast. So the idea that this engine had hidden performance potential was not new. Hit subscribe right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. Leave a comment below. What Ford model do you think changed history the most? But most people had forgotten, until one mechanic with a $5 spacer reminded everyone. This story is not just about a carburetor spacer. It is about something much bigger. It is about assumptions. The automotive world runs on assumptions. The automotive world runs on assumptions. This engine is slow. This car cannot be fast. This modification is stupid. This idea will not work. The Slant-Six carried the assumption of mediocrity for decades. Nobody looked at it as a performance engine because nobody expected it to be one. But engines do not know what they are supposed to be. They only know physics, air, fuel, fire, force. Get those 4 things right, and any engine will surprise you. The mechanic in this story did not have more knowledge than the engineers at Chrysler. He had something more valuable. He had no assumptions. He looked at the Slant-Six and did not see the grandma engine. He saw an engine that was not yet breathing as well as it could, and he fixed that. With $5 and 2 hours of work, the Chrysler Slant-Six ran in production from 1959 all the way to the year 2000. 41 years! In that time, it powered millions of Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth vehicles around the world. It earned a reputation as one of the most reliable 6-cylinder engines ever built in America. But somewhere in that history, on at drag strips and small shops across the country, there were Slant-Sixes that ran faster than anyone expected. Powered by physics, unlocked by curiosity, made possible by one mechanic who refused to accept what everyone told him an engine was supposed to be. The next time someone tells you that something cannot be done, remember the Slant-Six. Remember the $5 spacer. Remember that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is sometimes just one question that nobody thought to ask. Thank you for watching Auto Documentaries. If this story blew your mind, drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever done a simple modification that produced a result nobody expected? We want to hear your story, and subscribe, because every single week we bring you the stories of the machines and the people that history almost forgot. We will see you in the next one.